We got our first look at the Indianapolis Colts rookies with minicamp now in the books, and it seemed to spark some minds because today we are answering your questions all about it. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And this episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. What is up, y'all? This is Jake Arthur of horseshoehuddle.com. Your eyes and ears, your boots on the ground there, your credentialed member for the site. And today we are taking your questions because, it's been a little bit. The draft is in the rearview mirror. The rookies have gotten in there for rookie minicamp now. I was able to go out there and check that out over the weekend. And so there's a lot of questions now. I personally feel like I know a bit more about this roster and some of the position battles and kind of what the pecking order probably is and what the team seems to want to happen. I feel like I'm a little bit smarter in that aspect now. And you guys certainly had questions about that. So we're going to go over kind of some random questions you had just about whatever with the Colts, whether it's stuff about in the season, what have you, things down the road as well. Some player development stuff. You had a lot of questions about that. But first, we're going to kind of get into specific, position battles and position developments and what might transpire there at certain things. So first up, we're going to go to Blue Sky, which, by the way, if you're not on Blue Sky yet, that one's been popping off. We've been getting a lot of questions over there. Zach and I are both on Blue Sky, so not paid by Blue Sky to say that, but I'm just saying things are going well over there. So this first one is from Tremel on Blue Sky. Any camp battles that excite you more than others? Linebacker just seems like a terrifying battle to me. Just wanted to add that it's also wild how often Chris Ballard is confident that someone can be a better starter than the person that they failed to beat for the job. So I think a lot of people kind of share that sentiment, Tremel. I will say, just addressing the linebacker portion of it first, I really don't think there was any battles mostly to be had there at linebacker. Obviously, Jalen Carlisle and Zaire Franklin are going to be your primary two starters. I don't think they're going to be in base very often, but when there is a Sam on the field, I think it's going to be Sheagu Olubi. And then after that, you're really going to see like what Hunter Wooler has to offer, Joe Bachie, the newcomer, who I think those two are mostly going to be special teamers, Olubi as well. But those are probably the three I would see most likely coming in to play linebacker after Franklin and Carlisle. Now, a couple people did mention, especially with this comment being a terrifying battle, that Zaire Franklin and Jalen Carlisle are both banged up right now. So Zaire Franklin recently had a cleanup on his ankle, and they're hopeful that he's going to be back around time for training camp. That's really not concrete yet. Jalen Carlisle has been nursing a shoulder that he had issues with throughout last season. So both of their two starting linebackers, who they did not sign competition for or really much adequate depth for, those guys are going to be on the shelf basically until training camp. We'll see if they can get back a little sooner. But you basically have this albatross of time in between mandatory minicamp in mid-June and then the end of July when training camp starts. So probably not going to see those guys until camp, and hopefully they're both back by then. But, I mentioned Hunter Wooler. That's only kind of in theory that he's going to be getting some linebacker snaps. Like he might get some looks in dime, maybe some dime linebacker stuff. But I think he's primarily going to be with the safety group. So I'm with you. I think linebacker is probably the position this year that for some reason they think the depth there is fine, and it's just perhaps not. It seems a little bit like what they did to the safety group last year. So we'll see. It's certainly not great to say, it just didn't work out adding much linebacker depth in the draft, but we're only going to use two linebackers anyways. And, oh, yeah, those two linebackers aren't available right now. So that's a little bit iffy. But to answer the last part of your question about other position battles that I'm pretty interested in, RB2 between DJ Giddens and Khalil Herbert, that one interests me a lot. Whatever the pecking order is going to be at defensive end, because they certainly have some guys there that can compete. And then cornerback 3, you got Justin Wally, Jalen Jones, Samuel Womack, Juju Brents. I think that one is the most intriguing because that and defensive end has the most participants involved, and you truly don't know how it's going to shake out. So looking at RB2 real quick, DJ Giddens, just from what I'm picking up since the draft, the Colts really, really, really like Giddens, to the point where I think if he looks good by the time Jonathan Taylor's contract runs out, I mean, that's a couple years down the road, but I think they really like Giddens, and they think there's no reason he should have been there. They're in like the 5th round, and that he could be starting material. I mean, obviously not necessarily for them against Jonathan Taylor, but I think they love him as a 1-2 punch with Taylor now. And if he were to start for them long term, if something happens to Taylor, or Taylor's contract obviously runs out, I think they would be fine with Giddens. They seem to really, really like him. Defensive end, I think Kwity Paye is going to start at one spot. You think Laiatu Latu probably will start in another one. But then what else happens there? They love Samson Ebukam, but even if he's going to play some, giving a 30-year-old guy coming off an Achilles injury starting snaps doesn't seem wise. Like, I would compress his snaps and get more quality snaps out of him than a quantity of snaps, because you also don't need him to play a ton of the snaps. You have a lot of guys there. Tyquan Lewis factors into that as well. Isaiah Land is probably the odd man out if he's even able to make the roster. But they just got a lot of guys there. JT Tuimoloau, how is he going to factor into this thing? So I think they have all the reason in the world to get Tuimoloau out there. But at the end of the day, really deep position groups like defensive end and corner, as corny as it sounds, it really is going to come down to who gives them the best chance to win. I don't think they're super worried about development right this moment. Like, part of that responsibility has to fall on the players to kind of do their part to get up to snuff and get ready. I mean, they're going to develop the guys as best they can on the practice field and like behind the scenes, but playing time is going to be earned based on who gives the team the best chance to win. And then cornerback 3. So I think Jalen Jones obviously is going to get the first shot to start. I think the equity that Juju Brents had as a guy who automatically starts when he's healthy, I think that's probably gone. For 2 years now, he's basically not been healthy at all. Justin Wally is a guy who they picked in the 3rd round, who is basically handpicked for this defense and is really the only corner to that where that's the case so far. Lou Anarumo is inheriting Jalen Jones and Juju Brents and Samuel Womack. The only one that has been picked for Anarumo's defense to actually play is Wally. I mean, Corey Ballantyne is a special teams guy, so that doesn't really count. But I think Wally has a serious leg up. I think he's mostly going to see work in like dime sets. I don't necessarily think he's going to get that cornerback 3 spot right off the bat. But I do think he's definitely going to get some playing time this year. And then these next 2 that'll round out this first section both kind of have to do with the right side of the line. The Nick Sutton from Blue Sky said, is there any convo on moving Braden Smith back to guard from right tackle? Obviously great when he's healthy at tackle, but maybe to help with injuries and to let Matt Gonzalez and Jalen Travis compete at right tackle. And then Timmy Butler from Twitter said, do you guys think Matt Gonzalez could be a better guard than tackle? So kind of wrapping these 2 together. Just short and sweet on Braden Smith. No, he's not going to move inside to guard. I think they're just going to let whatever happens with Braden Smith, I think they're just going to let it play out. I think it's likely that this is his last year just because I think they respect him enough to allow him to maintain that starting spot at right tackle. But at the same time, they have guys in-house who, if they develop properly like they hope they do, then they have a succession plan for Smith. If he gets injured or if he makes it to the end of his contract and they move on, I mean, we saw that with Ryan Kelly this offseason. In my opinion, if I'm just projecting what's going to happen over the next year or so, I think they would like Jalen Travis to be that starting right tackle of the future. after Braden Smith's contract is up, and then Matt Gonzalez to be the starting right guard, which I think starts now. Drafting Jalen Travis allowed the Colts the flexibility to take Gonzalez out of that swing tackle spot and plug him into right guard, where now Jalen Travis and Blake Freeland can battle for that swing spot. We haven't spoken super highly of Blake Freeland on here, but I do think the Colts still have some hope that he can put up at least a little bit of a fight and take a next step in his development. I mean, because he was, a kind of more of a raw, athletic, big, lengthy offensive tackle type when they drafted him. I think they thought he would have been a little more developed by now, but I think they still have some hope there. So long term, I think it's Jalen Travis at right tackle after Braden Smith is done with the team, probably after this one-year contract, and then Gonzalez right guard for the foreseeable future, which obviously means Tanner Bortolini at center. So, guys, that was a good one, good round there. Coming up, we're going to talk about some more specific like player development questions that you guys had. And there's some good ones on here. We're starting to open up the brain banks a little bit. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. You guys ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all of my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. We can all be a little bit impulsive in our spending. For me, it's in my family's DNA, so no shame there. But that's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances, because hopefully a lot of us check our bank accounts online and stuff regularly, but it can just seem mishmash. But when you go to Monarch Money, it helps break things up where you can really see it and understand it and say, kind of gives you the big red circle and said, here is where your big problems are. It's not just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you stop just managing your money and actually start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Basically, since the pandemic started back in 2020, I have been working from home ever since. And then that gives me a lot more access to delivery. And, that just kind of never stopped. But now with the help of Monarch, I'm going to budget smarter and save more. And instead of just juggling multiple apps where all your finances are, you can use Monarch to kind of compress everything all in one place so that you can check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner, that's also smoother than ever now, too. We all know how stressful that can be, especially in the beginning. Monarch allows you to track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. All right, diving into some player development questions now. This one's from Chicago LP on Blue Sky. Any predictions for favorites from the rookie class who the fans and media will like from a from a personality standpoint? So luckily, I have gotten a chance to talk with most of these rookies at least a couple times by now. Overall, pretty serious group of dudes. Not a lot of like real fire quotes in these guys, but that's okay. Like they're there to play football. They're not there to, expound on their life story all the time and just think about giving all these passionate quotes all the time. So I think from a perspective of just going out and handling business, guys will like that. But from the guy who's probably got like the biggest personality of the group and is the most bubbly, I think that's Justin Wally. I think you guys are going to like him a lot. Now, until he starts playing more, you're probably not going to see a lot of sound bites and stuff from him. But Justin Wally he definitely seems like a great kid who's just kind of oozes joy. And I think you guys will like him a lot once he starts playing a bit. Jalen Travis, also really, really smart dude. He's a pretty decent quote as well. Again, he's kind of in the Wally thing where you're not going to hear much until he starts playing a bit. But really interesting story. He's kind of got a sophisticated, like, off-field background in like politics and a lot of other non-football stuff like Bobby Okereke had. So he's got an interesting story. I think you guys will probably like Jalen Travis a bit as well. And then our guy, fan of nuance on Blue Sky. Which returning players from last year's roster are the most likely to have a huge surprising jump in playing time? I think we can predict Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonzalez, but are there any quiet surprises in your estimation? So I think the ones that everyone else are probably thinking at the same time is like Latu, obviously in line for more playing time. But if we're talking surprises, some of these might even surprise me, but like I can see the path for these ones. Anthony Gould at wide receiver. No one's really talking about him. You can already really pencil him in as probably your starting kickoff and punt returner. And across the NFL, there were, I think Brian Mason told us the other day, it was like an 8-year high in big plays on kickoff returns. So you've got an explosive guy there. And on offense, if, Josh Downs gets nicked up and they don't necessarily want to throw A.D. Mitchell into that spot in the slot right away, I do think Anthony Gould could do a couple things offensively. Like last training camp, he did really, really well. He had a good report with Joe Flacco, connected on a lot of deep balls. So if Gould doesn't go into the doghouse again and like make some mistake on kickoff returns that basically turns him into a healthy scratch for half the season, then I think that Gould can do some things. Dalton Tucker. So if we assume Matt Gonzalez is going to be the starting right guard, then I think his backup is probably going to be Dalton Tucker. And Tucker got in for, what was that, like 5 or so games last year and looked pretty good as a rookie UDFA early until the wheels kind of fell off there. But you can assume some sort of natural progression in year 2. So Tucker could see the field in case of injury and could look pretty decent doing so if he does happen to get out there. And then Shegu Alubi, I think we're going to see more of. The Colts really didn't do anything at linebacker after losing EJ Speed and Grant Stewart. So I think you're probably going to see Alubi at minimum in his same special teams role, maybe an uptick in usage there. But I think he's penciled in as the third linebacker now. So you're probably not going to see a lot of base defense. But when you do see some classic, base 4-3 defense from the Colts, I think Alubi's probably going to be out there. Good chance he sees the most defensive playing time that perhaps he has in his career. And Zaire Franklin and Jalen Carlisle aren't out there right now. So guess who is about to get a ton of reps throughout the offseason to get ready for the regular season? That's Alubi. So those are 3 guys I could definitely see kind of a path to them getting on the field. It kind of all involves injury. I don't think there's any natural sneaky progressions we'll see from guys that are going to be by design. But in case of injury, I think those 3 guys could really kind of step up. This next one from Chicken Wing 3300 on YouTube. Assuming Anthony Richardson and Chris Ballard stay, how will the wide receiver room look in 2 to 3 years? Who would we sign long-term or let go? So if you're looking at free agents over the next couple years, after this season, Alec Pierce is going to be a free agent. And then in 2027, Michael Pittman Jr. and Josh Downs are going to be free agents. So Josh Downs being the slot receiver, I don't think is going to go anywhere. I think the Colts, as long as he stays relatively healthy, I think the Colts would be fine keeping him around for life. You could say the same thing with Pittman as well. But I think A.D. Mitchell is like the biggest X factor here. If A.D. Mitchell continues to not grow, then I think it's an easy decision for the Colts to bring back both Pittman and Pierce for the foreseeable future. But if A.D. Mitchell begins to look like the guy that they thought he was going to be when they drafted him, then it makes those guys a little more expendable, because Mitchell last year and probably this year as well was really supposed to be like kind of a direct threat to Alec Pierce's role. But really, Mitchell has the ability to have an all-around game and do everything like an X receiver is supposed to do, like the Colts initially envisioned for Pittman. So Mitchell really could do just about anything that you hope out of those 3 primary receiver roles. He's really good in one-on-one, can beat press with ease. It's just basically what happens after the ball has been thrown. That is like, you just don't know what is going to happen with him. And I know Zach went into that at length recently, but I mean, Downs is the only one I can say with certainty that the Colts would want to keep around for life. But when it comes to Pearson Pittman over the next couple years, it just totally depends on what AD Mitchell shows you. Obviously, I think the Colts would like both of them back, but if Mitchell is starting to look like a star, there's only so much room there to be had. This last one, really quick, we'll dive into from Cromani W on Blue Sky. Are there any previous examples of edge rushers who have had the finesse but lacked the power in their rookie years, who were able to gain the required play strength that we're hoping to see from Latu this year? And how do we feel about that happening for Latu? So I was trying to think of some guys in the past who were either just like super raw and they came into the NFL and they developed into really good players over time, or like play strength was their main issue, which Latu's not a small guy. Like, his play strength isn't a huge issue, but it's definitely the thing that needs to catch up more to make him a more effective player. So Danielle Hunter, when he was coming out, he got drafted out of LSU by the Vikings. He was so raw. He was such a random edge player. Like, you could see the physical gifts, but he had like no rush plan. And then over the next few years, he started to develop this superhuman body and he became super strong and he was still explosive. And so Danielle Hunter became just an incredible player after that. I think that's an easy one to kind of tell us straight to. Leonard Floyd as well. Leonard Floyd, coming out of Georgia back in the day, looked almost like a stick figure coming off the edge with very little play strength. He was all explosion basically. And he developed, play strength has never become his calling card, and it's never become really a strength either. But he became strong enough to be an effective player. I think he's had multiple double-digit sack seasons. He's not necessarily a star, but he's definitely a coveted player who teams will bring in to be their second or third pass rusher coming off the edge. So there's definitely hope for Latu. Even if he doesn't develop like a bunch more play strength, like, I'm really not concerned. I think he has a really high floor. Even if he would have just finished a few more plays last year, I think people would be questioning his, development a little less. But I really wasn't dissatisfied with what we saw from Latu last year. I thought it was a good start to what hopefully is more to come down the road. So coming up, guys, we are going to address a few more random questions that you guys have. We'll consider it a bit of a lightning round. All right, so ignore the dog. She's trying to put in her 2 cents out there. So this next one is from ZB2306 on Twitter. The Colts have been historically slow starters during the Chris Ballard era. Obviously, the week 1 curse of not being able to win the opening game. God, what does that go back to? Like 2013 or 15 or so. It's forever. It's been too long, to the point where I don't even care about saying how long it was anymore. Is there an ideal week 1 matchup for the Colts to break the week 1 curse and finally start the season on a positive note? So one of them, I'm totally okay with the Colts going week 1 in Jacksonville every year until the streak is broken. Our guy Kenan over on Twitter mentioned that today, and I could not agree more. Just give the Colts Jacksonville week 1 in Jacksonville until you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Why not? Why not? But no, if you're wanting to get off to a strong start and get a win under your belt right away, I think Tennessee is another very winnable matchup that the Colts have on the schedule this year. Home or away, doesn't really matter. They've swept them each the last 2 years. I expect Tennessee to be a little bit better this year with Cam Ward. Obviously, they made some okay moves, but I thought they had a good offseason last year, and they were bad. So Seattle is another one that I think the Colts could certainly win. Sam Darnold, I think, is going to be a decent player. They added Gray Zabel, which was nice, but they still have some questions across the board there. And then Pittsburgh, they don't have a quarterback. So the Colts beat them with a quarterback last year in Justin Fields. So should be an even more winnable matchup, I would think. So Tennessee, Jacksonville, Seattle, and Pittsburgh, those would be the teams that I would say would be probably the best matchups for the Colts in week 1. This next one from Blake 14 Jeffers on Twitter. Could Shane Steichen keep his job if Chris Ballard gets fired after another disappointing season? So as time has gone on, we used to kind of think Anthony Richardson, Chris Ballard, Shane Steichen were a package deal, but I do think there is room for some detail there for the Colts to consider if they do consider letting go of any of these three guys at any point after the season. So specifically, if Steichen keeps his job and Ballard is fired, that one's a little more interesting because it feels like Chris Ballard is the one that has 9 lives, So I think what would have to happen is for like Shane Steichen to be getting the absolute most out of the offense and the quarterback position. And I think it would have to be somewhat reminiscent of 2023, where there really weren't many gripes about Shane Steichen after 2023. We're like, wow, he milked everything out of the quarterback position with Gardner Minshew. The Colts were a 4th down away from getting to the playoffs. I think we would have to say Shane did a really good job with what he was given and that the offense did well. But like, I think the moves that Chris Ballard would have made, that the moves he made this offseason, those would have to look like, busts, either Cam Bynum and or Charvarius Ward would have to look like kind of crappy signings for whatever reason, which I do not expect to happen. But basically it would have to be like Shane Steichen got the offense and the team looking better than what he was given around him. And that there would have to be like clear flaws in what the Colts did this offseason, or like the positions that they've ignored, like linebacker depth would come back to bite them, or God, I don't know, like something happened to Nick Cross or Cameron Bynum, and then the fact that they don't really have many safeties behind them would become a huge problem. Again, it's probably the furthest stretch. I don't really see any of it happening, but we'll see. Crazier things have happened when it comes to the head coaching position with the Indianapolis Colts, as you guys well know. This next one from Cody S. Bunch of Numbers on Twitter. Do you guys think that the Colts have any players that fans might be taking for granted? The first one that comes to mind is Zaire Franklin. Love the show, fellas. So I think the Zaire one is fair. I do. So here's the thing with Zaire. A lot of people don't agree with like the stuff he would say on the podcast, and then like kind of his antics with like doing the fake handshake of Pat McAfee after the Week 18 win. Some of the stuff he would say on Twitter, and like mainly the fact that like things were burning down for the Colts around him and he was like pointing out stats and stuff like that. I think is super fair to not like. But the fact that people have not liked that, they've kind of allowed it to bleed over into him as a player. And by no means is Zaire a perfect player, because every time I've talked about Zaire, for the most part, I've mentioned, he's got to clean up a lot of the tackling things. And there were a couple things down the stretch late last year that did not look great on film when it came to his effort. It didn't always look awesome. But a lot of people, I think, act like Zaire is like some below average player, and I just don't think that's true. I think he's super productive. You can see that he's gotten better in coverage, like especially the mental aspect. And the guy affects the game in a lot of ways. Like you look at what he does, he creates a lot of turnovers. I just think he's a lot more productive than people give him credit for. Other guys who I just maybe think aren't talked about enough, or there's probably a misconception about them. Grover Stewart, I think everyone is just kind of used to him being awesome. And so he doesn't always necessarily get the love he needs, but the dude is truly a dominant nose tackle in the NFL, in a league where there's just not a lot of them. Michael Pittman Jr., I think he's done the routine so well for so long that whenever he makes a mistake, it gets amplified a lot. And I think people think he's a lot more expendable than he really might be. And I kind of feel for Pitt, because he's never had a good quarterback situation here, other than when he was a rookie with Phillip Rivers in 2020. And so his peak has never lined up with good quarterback play. And we've seen him be able to do anything a receiver should be able to do throughout his career. It's been bits and pieces of it in different seasons, and it's never been able to be put together in 1 year. So I unfortunately don't think that we have seen the best of Michael Pittman Jr. in 1 year because of the quarterback play. Mo Alley Cox as well. Now, don't get me wrong. This would never be the guy I would want to be leading the receiving threat of a tight end room like the Colts thought he was going to do after Jack Doyle. But he is truly one of the best blocking tight ends in the NFL, without question. I think a lot of people around the league would tell you that as well. And then Latu, I kind of touched on that earlier. I think because of, what Jared Verse did and what Chop Robinson did, that it made Latu look a lot worse. And he was the first defensive player taken in the draft, but they don't all develop at the same rate. I don't think this is the same thing that we're looking at with Anthony Richardson here, where there was a clear drop off in year 2, or, Latu didn't miss a bunch of time or anything. I think his development's coming around fine. And I expect to see a pretty decent jump from him in year 2. I just think we probably need to be a little more patient with Latu. And then next one here from Saka Shots on Twitter. Could Julian Blackmon be re-signed for depth purposes? No, I'm pretty confident that one is not going to happen. That one comes up a lot. Don't count on it. I don't think that one's happening. I imagine he'll probably sign somewhere. I don't know what his recovery is right now from his shoulder, but once he has a clean bill of health, and so I think he has had a couple visits at least this year. He's a talented player. I expect him to go somewhere. I don't think he's going to have to sit out all year or anything, but I do not think that it's going to be with the Colts. And then our last one for today from Kyle Winslow on Blue Sky. Crossover Pacers Colts question. Does the press have any influence on media availability? Do you guys get to request or suggest who you want to interview? Do Colts players draw straws or volunteer or rotate, etc.? So I don't know how the Pacers do it. I only have credentials with the Colts. But this time of year where we're not in the locker room every day, and, we'll get some mini camp and OTA availability again starting next week. But basically the Colts PR team kind of gives us the player. We don't get every player every day right now during this limited portion of the offseason, but they're really, really good about giving us the players who are important for you guys to hear from. Guys who there's been a major change with them recently, or some sort of news, or just the main star players of the team. Now, if there's someone we haven't gotten to talk to yet who we think you guys need to hear from, then we can request it and they'll oblige. But during the season, there are a couple guys, 2 or 3 guys who only talk on one day of the week. Other than that, everybody else in the locker room really has to be available upon request any day of the week. We're in there Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays. And that goes for after games in the locker room as well. Now, for the most part, we don't badger a lot of these guys every day. If we get what we need to hear from them, a day or two. But yeah, generally, if we request something or we request someone that we think needs to be heard from, it's, as long as it's a reasonable request and we're not ripping guys down, ripping their door down every day, we'll get what we need there. So again, I don't know how the Pacers do it. I do know that if you're referring to the Tyrese Halliburton thing the other day, he should have spoken. I think Nate Atkins had a really good tweet after that. The NBA is such a star-driven league. There's only 5 players on the court at a time, and Tyrese Halliburton is an all-league player. He's got to be out there, especially after losses. It's not a great look afterwards. And again, sometimes I know it's a media being the enemy thing and us getting butthurt, and that's really not it, because our job is to send information to the fans. And when a team's best player isn't speaking after a playoff loss, it's just not a great look. I understand Tyrese is there all the time after every game, which is great, which he's supposed to be, but yeah, you got to be available after a playoff loss. So that is it for today, everybody. Now, we actually got a ton of questions, so I'm going to try actually roll the leftover ones over to another episode for tomorrow, because we got a lot of really, really good ones today. So thanks again for making Locked On Colts your first listen today. Now, for your next listen, check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stops. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly, get the inside scoop, ask us your questions whenever, follow the link in our show notes. When we do Q&A episodes like this, those guys, the insiders, get the first dibs on questions. So definitely well worth everything. And if you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks2 on Twitter. We are also on TikTok and Instagram as well. Also, please be sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. We would love your ratings and reviews as well. And with that, thank you guys. You have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.